Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Women in Motorsports. Very excited to be back. Joe Santiago, and with me we have Ben Schneider, who is over in Sonoma working with Brock Beer. Last car, Ben, how's everything going in Sonoma so far?
It's going great. The weather's going to be significantly cooler than it was, especially on Friday last year. So that's going to be exciting for us to not have to deal with as much heat. And looking forward to getting back out there and working again with Brock, just as we were last week at Portland. Joe, it's been a little bit chaotic, with the travel and everything, but excited to be pulling off my own version of a double again this year. So it's been a lot of fun.
Very exciting seeing you over there. And yeah, last weekend was great over in Portland. We'll talk about the ArcWest later in the show. But Ben, one of the big surprises that came down was on Friday. We were in the media center following everything with ArcWest, and you were following the truck series. And that's when we got the big news that Toni Breidinger started was potentially going to be starting in the truck series race, called a substitute for Jesse Love, who went to replace Corey Heim, who was sick at Gateway. Toni Breidinger started 18th, finished 24th, one lap down. Ben, were you surprised that Toni was called to take over the seat? And did having the Xfinity Series all the way in Portland play a role in drivers' availability that weekend?
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly played a role. I'm thinking back to last year when AJ Allmendinger was trying to pull off traveling between Portland and Gateway for the Xfinity race on Saturday, and then winning that, and then having to hop on a flight to Gateway for the Cup race on Sunday. And the travel that goes into that. You certainly not surprised that it wasn't an Xfinity driver that got the call up there. Just to clarify for everybody, I think you mentioned this, Joe, but um, it was kind of a weird situation because Jesse Love was actually the one drafted in to replace Corey Heim, but he was scheduled to make his debut anyway in the one truck, so that opened the door for Toni Breidinger to step in. And I guess, not too surprising that she was called up if she was available, if she was at the track, given the run that she just recently had in her debut. I think she had a very solid outing there with a 15th place finish. I know she didn't quite finish as strong as she did in her debut in this race, but I think for her to get another race under her belt, get some more experience in the truck series, I think it was good for everybody involved. You hate to see it for Corey Heim, of course. You never want those to be the circumstances that a driver's getting another opportunity under, but hopefully he's back to 100%. If he's not already. I know the trucks are off this week. They were at Sonoma last year, and they're not this year. The Xfinity Series is. But nonetheless, for Breidinger, I think a solid opportunity for her. And again, 24th, one lap down. Not a great result by any means, but it's only her second start. She's still learning, gaining the experience, and I still think she, looked a little bit stronger on pace than she has in several of her ARCA starts over the last couple of years. So again, that might be just another situation of maybe it's the style of the truck and how that drives compared to the ARCA car, it just suits her a little bit better. But I think all in all, another solid race of her gaining valuable experience in the truck series. I think she did a fairly decent job there.
Fairly decent job, and I know, as you mentioned, it just seems like she's getting really suited into that truck pretty well compared to that Arcus car. Gateway is one of those tracks that is very challenging, and to be there quite late as a substitute driver, really something else. Great opportunity with her TRICON racing. Of course, she outqualified Hailie Deegan in the race as well. Hailie Deegan, that number 13, bad luck, hard racing, gets crashed, and overall just a rough weekend for her. She is quite well back in the points bin. It's not looking good at all for her, really, when it comes to the races we have remaining. 4 races before the playoffs. Do you believe Hailie Deegan is in a must win situation?
Yeah, I do at this point. And again, I think, in fairness to Deegan, I think it was like 4 thousandths of a second. I mean, she and Breidinger were very, very close, which again, I think for Toni, I think that's a huge result in qualifying to be able to be basically level with Hailie Deegan, who's got 2.5 seasons under her belt already. But yeah, 4 races left to go in the regular season. Again, with how the Truck Series is paced, and with 100 points to make up for the cutoff line, you're definitely looking at a must-win situation here. I would say possibly. I I don't know. I don't know. I mean, there's she's run strong in the road courses in the past. I think she got a top 10 in Mid Ohio last year. Those were one of her strengths when she was back racing K&N West, back in those days in 2018, 2019. So maybe you could say Mid Ohio might be an opportunity. Um, but yeah, I mean, none of the other three tracks, Nashville, Pocono, Richmond, that they don't really stand out to me in terms of major opportunities for her to go out and win the race. And I'm not even sure Mid Ohio does either. I think she could have a strong run at Mid Ohio, but again, I think it's gonna take a lot for her to win a race, and that's really her only option left to get in the playoffs at this point. I do think it's been a small step forward, but it's been a smaller step forward from 2022 and 2021 than we were hoping to see this year for her. And still a little bit behind her ThorSport teammates and where that truck's been running in recent years. So still a lot of ground to make up for Deegan. And with only 4 races left, you're definitely looking at a must-win if she's going to make the playoffs this year. But again, not sure any track stands out to me as a major opportunity for her. Like if Talladega was on the schedule, then of course, she works to draft it right. Anybody can win that race if they have a strong enough truck. But I'd say maybe Mid Ohio might be your best shot. But again, kind of a long shot to make the playoffs at this point. She's pretty much going to have to win a race with how many points she would need to make up before the cut line.
Yeah, must win situation. Nashville to me sort of stands out. Big thing is just having that clean race because it's 1.5 miles compared to the road course at Mid Ohio. I think that could be potentially crazy. Unfortunately, it seems like she seems to be in the wrong place, wrong time when things occur. Pocono, I just don't see. I think that's going to be a track where I see Zane Smith, potentially some of the fours running away with that. And then Richmond, that's going to be really interesting, but it's not as chaotic as, say, Bristol or Martinsville. I think really it's she's in a must win situation. None of the tracks really stand out to me as well. Now, of course, Toni Breidinger, as we talked about earlier, 2 races now under her belt. Both times she outqualified Hailie Deegan. So, of course, naturally, we know there's fans comparing her to Hailie. It's still too early for fans to really make that comparison. And could Tony make the case for potentially a full time ride in the Truck Series in 2024?
Well, with only 2 starts, I'd say it's still pretty early to try to make the comparison. And again, I think back to what Deegan's been saying for years. Again, going back when she was still a rookie in what was then K&N West. When you put the helmet on, but the car doesn't know your gender, or the helmet doesn't know your gender. Anybody can get behind the wheel of a race car and continue to work their way up the ladder. So I'm not even sure that the two. I mean, of course, I think being the only 2 female drivers in rides like this in the truck series, I know Jennifer Jo Cobb's still trying to figure out her program as well, but she doesn't have the equipment that TRICON or ThorSport have. Of course, if Breidinger makes enough starts, even if she goes part time beyond just 1 or 2 races in 2024, I think there are going to be some inevitable comparisons between the two of them. But at this point in particular, with only 2 races for Toni Breidinger, kind of early to compare the two. I think you would need to see at least a good half season of what Breidinger could do to get up to speed in a truck and kind of get settled into that program to really make an accurate comparison. Because again, there's just such a small sample size for her, whereas Hailie Deegan's run every truck race over the last 2.5 years. So, like I said, making a comparison at this point, I think is going to be pretty difficult. But we'll see. I think again, very impressed with Breidinger in her debut, and a solid run on short replacement notice this past weekend at a Gateway. So I would say that if it's in the cards, we'll see where her career path goes. But I think she could very well make a case for a full-time Truck Series ride if she's got the sponsorship opportunities and a ride becomes available.
Yeah, if a ride becomes available, especially the sponsorship, we know she has some sponsors, but they could step it up for full time in Truck Series. It'll be really interesting to see and follow. And I think I had to agree with you. I think it's just too early. 2 starts, one of them just a call as a substitute role, not a full preparation testing simulator like you would do when you got a debut race like she had in Kansas. Same with Hailie Deegan as well. Of course, her first race in Kansas, we all knew that was coming. Substitute role is something else when it's just literally the day of, and it's like, hey, you're gonna be racing. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And of course, the Truck Series will be back a couple weeks. Well, actually, in a few weeks because we got next weekend off, and then NASCAR returns after the one lone weekend off for the Cup Series, Nashville, with the Truck Series as well. Now, Ben, Detroit, we also had a brand new street circuit in Detroit, no longer in Belle Isle. And besides the IndyCar Series, we had the Indy Next doubleheader. And for Jamie Chadwick, that's another new street course. I'm very curious if Jamie wants to talk about some of her favorite street courses where with Detroit, because a lot of 90-degree corners, a lot of bumps we saw throughout the course, and it seemed like somebody said it reminded them of Nashville, especially some of the narrow areas. And it's like, yeah, it does remind me of Nashville in a way. Jamie Chadwick, first race he started 15th, climbed up to 11th place, finished on the lead lap. But then race two, started 14th, but then there was some contact, finished 16th place, 5 laps down. Right now she is 17th in the points. Now, of course, we're still pretty early in the season, 21 races, 7 done completed. With her first season, is this something where we should anticipate she's right now where she should be? Because this is a brand new rookie season, very different. And the second season in the next is going to be more of a turnaround where she's going to be up towards the front performing.
I think so. I've got to confess, I was expecting her to be a little bit higher in the standings than she is right now. Now, of course, like you mentioned, Joe, we are still, just wrapping up the first third of a season here, and competition in what's now the Indy Next Series is as strong as it's been in years. There's several great young drivers in that series, and again, some of them, fighting up front for the top of the point standings. They're also rookies as well. So, I don't know, but it's totally an excuse for Chadwick to be down in 17th in the points. Again, I was expecting her to be a little bit higher than that, but I don't think you can totally hold it against her at the same time either, because it is a completely different vehicle compared to what she drove in the W Series and is used to driving in her career. So again, like we've been saying on the show all year, the main thing for Chadwick this year is just to gain experience, log the laps, and get used to how the car drives. Now, if she's 17th in the Indy Next standings next year, then that's when you start sounding the alarm bells, and those things start going off, because we certainly in an Andretti Autosport Indy Next car, you would expect her to take that step forward and start fighting for at least top tens and top fives for sure, if not podiums and wins. She would certainly have the equipment to do it, assuming that everything stays together with this program going into 2024 during that second season. So that's certainly when you would expect her to start stepping it up a little bit. But again, the first season in any new vehicle, any car that drives differently from what you're used to is always going to be a bit of a learning curve. We'll see if she can take at least some steps forward later on the second part of the calendar. But I think for the first season, she's done a solid job keeping things relatively clean. I mean, that's the biggest thing you can ask for. Above all else, running as many laps as you can and logging that experience. So that's about where I see Chadwick right now. But that second season, of course, that's when you want to see her start to rise to the occasion and start competing more up front.
Yeah, I honestly had the same expectation, I think, as you. I was thinking she'll be a little higher up, potentially top 10 in the points just through consistency. But we're not seeing that right now. I still remember when I talked to Linus Lindquist how he just said it is such almost a different mentality to going from driving the Formula 4 cars, being smooth, to here being aggressive, getting those tires worked in, heated up, and going. It's something where I think the second season is really what we're going to look at. But I can almost sense that, it is sort of because of what we've seen her in the W Series. A lot of folks probably had these expectations she'll be much higher up. So I do agree that this is probably, a solid position where she's in. Not exactly ideal. Of course, every driver would love to be higher up in the standings, higher up finishes. But for Jamie Chadwick, first year Indy Next, I think a lot of people are still very excited to see her here. And then next year, I think it's really, as a car returning back to the same tracks, I think it's going to be really a turnaround season for her.
All right, Joe. Well, it's been a while since I've been on the show. It's been a while, I understand, since you've discussed the National Hot Rod Association and NHRA drag racing there at Bristol for the Thunder Nationals near Bristol Motor Speedway. this weekend. Top Fuel sees Brittany Force second in the points, 17 behind Steve Torrance, despite not having a win this year. So, Joe, 7 races in a 21 race schedule. Are you surprised that she hasn't won yet?
I am surprised she hasn't won yet. It's one of those deals where you look at Brittany Force's season last year when she won the championship, had about a good handful of wins at this point, was up towards the front, really dominating the season. And of course, once you get to the countdown, their version of the playoffs, it all comes closer together where she had to come from behind to get the win again. Top Fuel, it is very competitive this year. Brittany Force, overall, seeing the consistency she's putting together and staying second place in the points is very impressive. NHRA is really interesting. Nobody has any sort of provisional charter fastest 16 qualify in. If you're not one of those 16, you're out. Including if it's Brittany Force, it doesn't matter who it is. If you're not the fastest, you don't make the race. So Brittany Force, I think overall, looking very solid. A lot of people anticipate her to get a win this year. I really anticipate her to get a win this year. And not only her, but in Top Fuel, I would say also Leah Pruitt. She got a win last year. I thought this year it will come out stronger. Everything going on with her. Still has not gotten that win yet. She's still in the top 10 in points. Right now being shown fifth in points, 34 points behind the points leader. So still the competition is very close in Top Fuel. All the drivers I think still have potential to go out there and get the win. It's very early in the season, and overall, I think it's still a surprise that she hasn't won the race, Brittany Force, yet. But there's still plenty of time. I wouldn't be sounding alarm bells that we're getting closer to the countdown and you don't have a win yet.
I know a lot of people are surprised. Camry Caruso, the only female driver to win so far in 2023 back in March. She's sixth in the Pro Stock Series, while the favorite for championship, Erica Enders, is 14th out of the NHRA countdown, their playoff at the end of the season, like you were mentioning, Joe. So is Enders in trouble being that far away from the points lead, 335 markers back?
It looks daunting, that huge points lead gap. But the big thing is the way the points system work in the National Hot Rod Association. If she could start getting together some wins, she could easily cut that deficit down in half. You could gain upwards of 80 points per race weekend. That's the maximum you could gain. Over 100 points for the race winner and everything. So she could still have time to go out there and get the points lead. The big thing is Pro Stock is very competitive as well because that class compared to Top Fuel and Funny Car, Pro Stock is sort of seen as they're more stock-like vehicles. The competition is much more closer. So what Erica Enders was doing, getting championship after championship, was very impressive because that was just very much a competitive class where getting those championships was not easy at all. Camry Caruso being the only female driver to get the win, great start for her in this season. Overall, been run pretty solid. If she could continue that, she'll easily be in the countdown. She didn't make the countdown last year. I anticipate Camry to get there, but for Erica Enders, I think she does need to start turning things around, getting those wins, or at least making it to the final rounds where the points really start to pay.
Alexis DeJoy is having a good start to the season, fourth in points, 62 back, and been fast all last year in Funny Car. She won at Bristol in 2021. So, Joe, could she be back in contention to win again here at Bristol?
Easily, I see her being a contender at Bristol this weekend. She has had a fast car all year long, has won some of the smaller challenges like the Missing Chip Challenge, I believe, in Las Vegas. Still looking for the race win of this year, and I think it could come at Bristol. She seems to be really confident entering this track year after year, especially after getting that win in 2021. It's been a real surprise with her considering she has sponsorship with Rocket, who, of course, we knew sponsored Tatiana Calderon last year. Then they had their issue where they had to stop sponsorship, and Alexis lost that sponsorship as well. Came into the season right before the season started, got a sponsorship deal, and has been running really fast. It sometimes seems when a team loses a sponsor, they get one last minute that is good enough but doesn't pay exactly all the bills. They seem to fall off the pace, but Alexis has not done that at all. She just seems to be on the pace, competitive, very fast cars week in and week out. I see her. If we did pick a winner for the NHRA, I would pick her for funny car.
Well, certainly lots to look forward to at Bristol, and we did have one woman on the grid when we were out there at Portland last weekend, Joe. Unfortunately, she didn't get the chance to start the race, but let's talk a little bit about Roxally Camper here.
Yeah, Rixeli Camper. We talked to her on Thursday. Of course, what they do at Portland, they have at Kenton Station. The drivers go out there, do a meet and greet. Roxelli was there. We talked to her. You can find that video on our Portland NASCAR coverage playlist. She got a ride with Last Chance Racing, the number 39 Chevrolet. Unfortunately, though, for the 15-year-old, first practice went out. Just literally the first lap. Didn't even complete the full lap at Portland International Raceway. Engine blew. We had a long caution flag, then a red flag for the cleanup. She was done for the day. Ben, they still pushed her car towards the grid, but she didn't start the race. It just had been a tough break. We saw her throughout the weekend. How disappointed is it for any driver, and especially this is your debut race in the ARCA West Series, to go through what she went through?
That's got to be incredibly disappointing. And I know you got the chance to interview her Thursday evening, Joe, like you were mentioning, and she was very excited of a chance to make her debut in the ARCA Menards Series West. And unfortunately, that debut's been put on hold, although I suppose the record book will show a 24th place finish and it did not start reason out, but certainly not the debut weekend that she was hoping for. And very similar situation actually to the last time we were at Portland. I remember Andrew Tuttle was behind the wheel of that same car, and you got the chance to catch up with him afterwards, and he said, the same sort of thing. The car just, broke down in qualifying or practice or whatever, and it left him unable to start the race. So it's an unfortunate deal for that group. I hope they can get their program back together again and come out for more of the West Series races later this season. But, for Roxally Camper in particular, got to be a very, very disappointing weekend, and unfortunate that she really couldn't even complete a lap. I think timing and scoring showed her with one lap complete in practice, but the time was like 150 something. I think it was just a very slow shakedown at a much slower pace than running a hot qualifying lap or a practice lap, try to get the car up to speed, and that's when the engine went as well. So really her weekend was over before it could even begin, and it's an unfortunate deal for her. But again, hopefully it's not the end for her and she can get another opportunity, if not later this season going into 2024. And hopefully Tuttle's team as well can, try to put together a little bit of a stronger program going forward and try to avoid some of these problems, because I imagine it's got to be frustrating for everybody on the team working on the cards as well.
Yeah, it has to be really frustrating. The last couple of times, engine problems for Last Chance Racing at Portland. And as you said, just has to be really incredibly frustrating. They put in a lot to get this to come together for the race, and to not even get to turn in a lap. It's just really unfortunate break. I'm trying to, because I know I went in the festival corners, the Shelton chicane, excuse me, before the ARCA practice. Got there just as the first batch of cars were going, and some of them cut through the Shelton chicane because in ARCA they don't use the chicane on the first lap and the restarts. Maybe that's where I didn't get a chance to unfortunately take a photo of her compared to the other drivers. But shortly later is when we found out, oh, we're under caution. Someone blew an engine. So it's really tough break. Hopefully we'll see her at the track sometime this season. But definitely, I think if assuming everything doesn't work out in this season, hopefully next year at Portland, we can see her at the track. Now, Ben, we'll go to something, of course, that's a little bit more better. The shining moment, of course, from this past race weekend, and I'll open it up to the last couple of race weekends because we haven't been on the air. Busy time for the Grid Network, but now we're getting everything all back to routine, even though you're on the road, and then a couple of weeks from now, I'll be back at the track. What is your one shining moment?
Well, if you want to open it up to the last couple of weekends, a couple come to mind. My first is Catherine Legg, being the only female driver to start the Indianapolis 500 this year, the only Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan Racing driver to lock in on speed before bump day. I know she didn't have the race that she wanted. I know she took a lot of heat unnecessarily for what happened with Stephen Wilson there. I think, that was really unfortunate to see. Given the nature of that action, I think that could have been any two drivers at the back of that stack up there that got caught up in that. So an unfortunate deal for her. Hopefully that's not. Hopefully she doesn't wait another 10 years this time before we see her back at the Indianapolis 500 again. But for being that long, I think overall she had some flashes of brilliance this past month, and again, none more so than taking the only Ray Hall car into the top 30 and avoiding having to fight for a bump day spot on the last row of the grid the next day. My second shining moment, if you want to stick with this past weekend, I think I know we talked about it briefly, comparing Toni Breidinger and Hailie Deegan, but the fact that Breidinger, and again, I know it was only like 0.004 of a second. I mean, it was razor close, but to start one spot ahead of Hailie Deegan and out qualify her, I think a very strong qualifying effort for her. And again, I've kind of been pleasantly surprised by what we've seen from Breidinger in her first two starts. To finish just one lap down every time and run almost all the laps. And again, that the 15th place in her debut, a very strong run in particular. But again, I think it might just be a situation of the truck suiting her driving style a little bit better. But especially for this race to be called up last minute to replace somebody who's had to step in and replace another teammate who's fallen ill. I think she did a very solid, very solid job, all things considered, this past weekend. So that'll be my one shining moment. Just limited to this weekend would be Toni Breidinger.
I would have to say, if I was to do one for this weekend and past weekend, Toni Breidinger as well. The one I was thinking of, especially over at F1 Academy, we didn't talk about, but Lena Buller, she got her first win in F1 Academy, and I feel this was a huge moment for her because overall, I feel, especially with F1 Academy, we've been following the W Series drivers like Marta Garcia, Nira Marti. We knew they were going to be up towards the front. Other drivers that have a lot of names, the Alcabasi sisters, they both got wins. Alina Buller had always been pretty consistent to retirement still overall. She got her first win in F1 Academy. I think it really just put the driver to where she's now being talked about with the W Series drivers, with the Alcabasi sisters, not only for the championship, but I think with race fans in general outside that do try to follow some of the female motorsports, because everyone knows about Jamie Chadwick, the drivers that were in the W Series. To get this attention for Lena Buller, her first win in F1 Academy, I think that's huge for her. That is my one shining moment. Now, of course, we're out of time here, but we encourage everyone be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon. We're going to be on the air tomorrow for Grid Live Wrap Up. Julia will be with us tomorrow for MotoGP, Italian Grand Prix preview, and of course, we're going to preview the NASCAR Cup Series race weekend at Sonoma. And you could buy us a coffee if you want. You could buy Ben a coffee as well too. Just put it in the website. Thank him for the coverage he's bringing to from Portland and Sonoma. And of course, if you want to invest in the Grid Network each and every month, Patreon, calling the show, Mark, Robin, David, our newest one, will read your name at every episode on Grid programming. So definitely be sure to check out the links in the video description. Of course, a link to Ben's channel as well in the video description. Ben, I know overall Sonoma sounds like we're going to have Arca West today where you get to cover that, and then Xfinity Cup Series. How excited are you for this race weekend? And is there going to be any particular stories you're going to be following when it comes to the races?
Well, of course, we'll be following the West Series the most closely. Brock's going to kind of defer to me on that one since that's kind of a series I cover the most for him. A little bit disappointing if we want to stick with the women in motorsports team. I think this is the first weekend in over a decade where just across every race at Sonoma, there's not a single female driver, at least to my knowledge, competing in the races this weekend. Of course, not in the Cup Series. I don't believe there's any in Xfinity. Natalie Decker, I don't think is here this weekend. And, again, with the West Series, you've had Bridget Burgess the last couple of years. And then obviously 2020 the race was canceled due to the pandemic, but Hailie Deegan was running West in 18 and 19, those 2 years. And then you had Danica Patrick, of course, running in the Cup Series when they made their annual trip to Sonoma. So first time in a while, won't really have anything to bring to this show from the Sonoma weekend, unfortunately, but still looking forward to a very fun weekend here at Sonoma. And obviously you can stay tuned for my coverage of the ARCA Menard Series West. And of course, Brock always does a great job keeping up to date with the Cup Series. And now we've got the Xfinity Series out here at Sonoma for the first time. So going to be an interesting dynamic there. I do kind of wish there weren't quite as many Cup drivers in that Xfinity race. We got 7 Cup drivers running that race, so I think it's probably going to come down to a battle between, your Kyle Larsons, AJ Allmendingers, and Ty Gibbses of the world for the win there. But maybe an Xfinity regular will surprise us and kind of put them on the map as a shining moment, so to speak. And again, much more on that race on a special Tuesday edition of Grid Live Encore. I say that we've done the last 2 shows on Tuesday just because of how the rain delay and how late the Gateway race ran. It's kind of pushed the show back, but it's not going to become a regular thing. It's just we got one more week doing the show on Tuesday because I've got a red eye back from San Francisco to the New England area and flight into Boston, Logan. So I need a day to travel back and get ready to bring you guys the Encore show, but we're looking forward to doing that the conclusion of this weekend. So stay tuned for that. And I think, Joe, you're muted.
Looking forward to Grid Encore, and we'll see 7 Cup Series drivers. Tuesday, that'll give Josh plenty of time after 24 hours to call, but definitely very excited to have you over there and wishing you a wonderful weekend, wishing everyone a wonderful day, and enjoy the races. Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.